The chamber was massive, a towering cathedral of alien grandeur. The walls pulsed with a bioluminescent glow, shifting hues and rhythm with the council's murmurs. The celestial concordium, an assembly of the most powerful species in the known galaxy, filled the amphitheater. Their voices layered in arrogance, a symphony of dismissive laughter, guttural hisses, and condescending trills. At the center of it all stood Commander Elias Varen. A lone human. His uniform was worn, the once pristine insignia of Earth tarnished by blood and war. His shoulders were squared, his eyes unwavering, despite the suffocating presence of hundreds of alien rulers who saw him as nothing. Your threats, the High Chancellor intoned, his elongated jaw clicking with amusement, are as meaningless as your species. The Council acknowledges your enthusiasm, but let us be clear, human. He gestured toward the holographic display above them. Earth. Or what was left of it. A shattered ruin. The oceans had been vaporized, the continents rendered to glass, nothing but a smoldering corpse adrift in space. The silence was deafening. Varen's hands clenched behind his back. His face remained stone, but his pulse pounded in his ears. The matter is settled, another counselor sneered, his gelatinous form shifting in smug ripples. Humanity is over. You have no worlds. No armies. No future. What possible purpose does this meeting serve? Varen's lips curled into something dangerous. I came here to deliver a message. More laughter. You're delusional, the Chancellor sighed, exasperated. Your species has perished, and yet you stand here like a wounded animal, still bearing its fangs. It is. You don't understand, Varen cut in, voice sharp as a blade. You think this is victory. You think you've won. The laughter faded slightly. His words did not match his expression. He was not defeated. You think because Earth is gone, humanity is gone. He took a slow step forward. That we will kneel. That we will break. He exhaled. Cold. Controlled. You don't realize what you've done. The air in the chamber shifted. The certainty in his tone, the absolute finality, unsettled even the most arrogant among them. Varen continued. You haven't ended us. You've created something far worse. A species with nothing left to lose. You have given us one purpose. His gaze swept across the assembly, locking onto each leader who had voted for Earth's extermination. And we will see it through. No matter how long it takes. No matter the cost. Silence. The Chancellor leaned forward, a smirk returning to his alien features. And what, exactly, do you think you can do? What force do you command? A handful of refugees? Starving criminals? A few murmurs of amusement rippled through the chamber. You have no ships. No armies. No home. Varen's head tilted. No home, he echoed. That's where you're wrong. He lifted a single hand, tapping a small device embedded in his wrist. The room's lights flickered. Then, the holographic display shifted. The image of Earth, still smoldering, vanished, replaced by something else. A list. It began scrolling rapidly, line after line, too fast for the Council to process at first. But then, they understood. Coordinates. Their coordinates. Every fortress world. Every hidden supply depot. Every shipyard, research station, and military outpost within the Concordium's entire dominion, listed. Logged. The Chancellor's smug expression fractured. Varen smiled. You wiped out our homeworld, he said, his voice almost conversational. So we took yours. Panic. Across the chamber, counselors frantically tapped into their private data links, attempting to verify what should have been impossible. Their secure military networks. Their classified locations. All compromised. How? One counselor gasped, his iridescent tendrils curling in horror. That's impossible? Varen finished for him. That's what you thought when you unleashed your sterilization fleets. You thought we'd be extinct before we could adapt. Before we could evolve. His smile faded, replaced by ice-cold fury. You should have known better. The Chancellor slammed his clawed hand onto the podium, voice rising in desperate command. Shut it down. Find the breach. Another counselor shrieked, her translucent skin flashing erratic colors. This is a trick. A bluff. Varen let them panic. He let them grasp for control they no longer had. And then he spoke one final time. You should have listened. The room plunged into darkness. The bioluminescent walls flickered erratically before dying entirely. The chamber's emergency power hummed to life, dim red lights casting eerie shadows over the assembled counselors. Then the alarms began. Not just in the chamber. Not just in the capital. Everywhere. Across the entire Concordium, emergency distress signals flared to life. Blackout. Thousands of military systems offline. Planetary defense grids disabled. Secure communications cut. And then, a single transmission played across every world. A voice. Human. Cold. Unforgiving. We warned you. The screen flickered again. A single image replaced the panic-stricken faces of the council. A fleet. Not one. Many. Dozens of warships. Some stolen from the Concordium. Others rebuilt from the graveyards of human colonies. And more, new designs, forged in secret, weapons humming with technology the Concordium did not understand. And they were already in motion. You wanted to erase us, Varen's voice whispered through the transmission. Instead, you gave us a reason to become something you can't stop. Can't fight. Can't kill. The Council watched in growing horror as the human fleet spread across the stars, targeting their core systems. One by one, their worlds would fall. One by one, their leaders would vanish. One by one, their species would learn fear. Varen turned to the Chancellor, meeting the alien's eyes one last time. You asked me what purpose this meeting served. He took a step back, his job already done. Now you understand. The emergency klaxons screamed across the chamber, but it was too late. Varen didn't need to be here anymore. The war had already begun. He tapped his wrist device once more, activating his extraction signal. A blinding light engulfed him, then he was gone. The High Chancellor turned back to the display, watching as the first Concordium stronghold burned. They had laughed. They had mocked. Now, they understood. And for the first time in their empire's history, the Concordium knew what it was to be hunted. The bridge of the Erebus was silent except for the soft hum of its engines, drifting in the void between stars. Elias Varen stood at the helm, staring at the holographic map of the celestial Concordium's remaining strongholds. Red markers flickered across the display, enemy positions, fleet movements, planetary defenses. He exhaled slowly, fingers tracing over the symbols like a predator mapping its next kill. Behind him, Captain Rourke broke the silence. The Council's in full panic mode. You should have seen the chatter, every major planet just locked down their borders. Mass evacuations. It's chaos. Varen didn't smile. He had no reason to. Good. Rourke leaned against the console, arms crossed. So what's the move? We crippled their systems, but they'll start recovering. And you know they'll throw everything they have at us once they get their comms back. Varen's gaze remained fixed on the display. They won't have the chance. A voice crackled over the comms. Commander, we're picking up encrypted transmissions from Vaeltir Prime, Concordium High Command's last fallback world. It's under full lockdown. Varen's eyes darkened. Patch it through. The transmission was grainy, but the desperation in the alien voices was unmistakable. Initiate Omega contingency. Full fleet recall. Mobilize every remaining asset, deploy Titan-class carriers, reinforce. A sudden, guttural scream cut the message short. A beat of silence. Then a new voice, colder, controlled. The revenants are already here. Rourke let out a low whistle. Damn. Our guys work fast. Varen shut off the transmission. Veiltir Prime falls tonight. No speeches. No hesitation. The war wasn't about pride or vengeance anymore. It was procedure. He turned to his crew. Prepare for immediate engagement. I want infiltration teams hitting their planetary defenses before they know we're in orbit. Once their shields are down, we bring the hammer down. Rourke grinned, already moving. Time to remind them why they should have listened. Within minutes, the Erebus surged into hyperspace, leading a fleet of reclaimed Concordium warships, human dreadnoughts, and Black Ops frigates. The target was set. The Concordium was running out of time. Veiltir Prime loomed ahead, a fortress world nestled behind layers of defense grids and orbital artillery platforms. None of it mattered. The instant the fleet dropped out of hyperspace, all hell broke loose. Turret fire streaked across the void, lighting up the darkness like a storm of plasma. Human warships weaved through the chaos, their sleek hulls ghosting past targeting locks, their weapons finding every weakness. Inside the Concordium's planetary command center, High Marshal Tirvac bellowed orders, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Deploy every available unit. Seal the Citadel. This planet must not. Boom. The war room shook violently as explosions rippled across the planetary shield generators. Red emergency lights bathed the room in an ominous glow. Tirvac's second in command, a reptilian officer, stumbled forward, his voice tight with panic. Sir, ground defenses are compromised. The enemy is already inside the Citadel perimeter. Tirvac slammed a clawed fist onto the table. Impossible. We have. The doors burst open. Smoke billowed into the chamber, and through the haze, human silhouettes emerged. Not soldiers. Hunters. They moved like shadows, weapons primed, helmets cold and expressionless. Void revenants. Humanity's answer to extinction. Their armor absorbed the dim red light, making them look like death incarnate. Tirvac reached for his sidearm. Too slow. A single, controlled burst from a revenant rifle removed his hand from his body. He screamed, collapsing against the war table, ichor pooling beneath him. The revenant leader stepped forward, lowering his rifle. His helmet retracted, revealing a scarred human face. High Marshal Tirvac. The revenant's voice was calm, almost bored. You're coming with us. Tirvac's mandibles clicked weakly. HFY. The revenant crouched beside him, voice dropping to a whisper. Because our commander wants you to see what happens next. The orbital battle was over in minutes. Human forces infiltrated every key facility, disabling planetary shields, corrupting defense networks, and turning Concordium weapons against their own forces. By the time the Erebus touched down on the planet's surface, Veiltir Prime was burning. Varen stepped onto the charred soil, his boots crunching against the debris of what had once been the Concordium's most fortified stronghold. Rourke greeted him with a smirk. Cleanup's almost done. They didn't even put up a fight once the shields dropped. Looks like the Council's been running out of soldiers. Varen's expression remained unreadable. Where is he? Rourke gestured behind him. Tirvac was on his knees, bound, bleeding, shaking. The once proud marshal of the Concordium refused to look up. His arrogance was gone. His certainty obliterated. Varen knelt beside him. How does it feel? Tirvac's voice was weak. You don't have to do this. Varen tilted his head slightly. That's what the Concordium said when they came for Earth. A tremor ran through the alien's body. Varen leaned in, his voice ice cold. Tell me, Marshal. How many worlds have you erased? How many voices have you silenced, believing it would end there? Tirvac swallowed hard, mandibles twitching. We thought it was necessary. We believed. You believed wrong. Varen stood, turning his back. Take him. Tirvac's breathing hitched. Wait. Wait. Please. A revenant slammed a boot into his back, shoving him forward. There was no mercy. No sparing him. The marshal would be brought to a place worse than death, a fate Varen had reserved only for the highest of Concordium leaders. Rourke exhaled, watching as the last pockets of resistance were wiped out. We just decapitated the last head of their war machine. Varen nodded. The Council is next. As the fleet left Vaeltir Prime behind, the final phase of the war was already in motion. Across the galaxy, the last members of the Celestial Concordium, once untouchable, were now hunted. No more war. No more battles. Only execution. The air inside the Concordium Council's last stronghold was thick with fear. The Great Chamber, once a place of absolute control, now reeked of desperation. The surviving councillors sat huddled in silence, their towering thrones now feeling like fragile perches, their ornate robes doing nothing to hide the sweat slicking their alien skin. The doors were sealed. Every fleet they had left was recalled. Every defense system was activated. They had turned this place into an impenetrable fortress. It wouldn't matter. High Chancellor Orvash sat at the head of the chamber, trembling. His elongated fingers drummed against the metal armrest of his throne, a rhythmic twitch betraying the panic beneath his composed exterior. His voice was low, urgent. Status report. The defense minister, a trembling insectoid, barely lifted his head. Every planetary defense system is active. We've stationed all remaining forces within the fortress. Shields at maximum capacity. We are secure. A lie. Everyone knew it. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. A new transmission. Every holographic display flickered, replaced by a single symbol. A human insignia. Someone exhaled sharply. A counselor muttered a prayer in his native tongue. The symbol disappeared. And a face took its place. Elias Varen. The Phantom. The Warlord. The ghost of the species they had tried to erase. No introduction. No demands. Chancellor Orvash, Varen said, his voice even, controlled. I know you're listening. Silence. Orvash felt a pressure in his chest, his throat constricting as he forced himself to answer. Commander Varen. Varen leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes unreadable. Do you know why I let you reach this point? The question sent a fresh wave of tension through the chamber. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Orvash's voice came out unsteady. Varen continued as if he hadn't heard. I could have ended this long ago. I could have struck before you had a chance to regroup. Before you locked yourself inside that tomb you call a fortress. He tilted his head slightly. But I wanted you to feel it first. The counselors stiffened. Feel what? Orvash whispered. Varen's voice turned cold. The fear. The waiting. The dread. He leaned back slightly, letting the silence stretch. It's something we learned well after you destroyed our home. You taught us what it was like to be powerless. To know that death was coming and that there was nothing we could do to stop it. Orvash's throat bobbed. But you made one mistake, Varen continued. You thought humans would break. His expression darkened. We don't break. We adapt. And then. He exhaled. We hunt. The word landed like a blow. A new alert flared across the chamber. External scans disrupted. All outgoing signals blocked. Emergency beacons disabled. The defense minister let out a shuddering breath. They're inside. Orvash's stomach turned to ice. Impossible. Varen smirked. Do you know how long we've been here? He tapped the console in front of him. Weeks. Waiting. Watching. The realization hit the council like a physical force. We disabled your failsafes before you even activated them, Varen said. We rewrote your defense codes. We reprogrammed your AI sentries. Your fleets. They're not coming. You're alone. A distant boom vibrated through the chamber. The first breach. Someone cursed. Orvash's fingers dug into the armrest. This is madness. Varen's gaze sharpened. No. This is justice. Another explosion rocked the structure. A counselor leapt from his seat. We must negotiate. No, Varen said, his voice final. There is no negotiation. There is no surrender. You didn't offer that to humanity when you sterilized our worlds. A sharp hiss cut through the chamber's speakers. The security feeds flickered on. The fortress was falling apart. Armored figures, humans, moved through the hallways like ghosts, cutting through the last of the Concordium's elite soldiers. The resistance was non-existent. The counselors watched their doom unfold in real time. Orvash gripped the edges of his throne. You can't kill us all. The Concordium stretches beyond this chamber. There will be others. Varen nodded. Good. The calmness in his voice sent a chill through the chamber. We'll hunt them too. The Chancellor's breathing quickened. His mind raced for an escape, an answer, something, anything. Varen studied him for a moment. You still don't get it, do you? His voice softened, almost curious. This isn't just a war. It's a lesson. Orvash's mouth was dry. A lesson? Varen's expression turned to steel. The galaxy will never forget what happens here. They will never forget what happens when you try to erase humanity. They will see what we did to you, and they will know, he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. What it means to be hunted. The final detonation shook the chamber. The doors burst open. Dark armored figures surged in, weapons raised. The council screamed. Gunfire erupted. One by one, the rulers of the Celestial Concordium fell. And for the first time in history, the hunters became the hunted. The sound of boots echoed through the ruined corridors. The great Concordium fortress, once a beacon of absolute power, now crumbled under its own weight. Smoke hung in the air, carrying the stench of burning metal and something worse. The screams had long since faded. What was left was the steady, methodical advance of the void revenants. Elias Varen moved through the wreckage with the quiet certainty of a man who had already won. The war was over, but the hunt was not. His gaze remained fixed ahead as his team swept through the shattered halls, weapons raised, their armor slick with the blood of those who had ruled the galaxy unchallenged. Rourke's voice crackled through the comms. Control room secured. Their last defense grid is offline. Varen responded without breaking stride. Status of the remaining counselors? A brief pause. Less than 10 still breathing. They ran for the lower levels. Looks like a panic room. Varen smirked. There's nowhere left to run. The final doors stood ahead, reinforced, sealed, but meaningless. A Concordium emblem, cracked down the middle, adorned the entrance. Behind it, the last of the High Council cowered in the dark, convinced they could still buy time, still bargain for their lives. Varen placed his hand against the cold metal and spoke. Open the door. Silence. Then, the trembling voice of High Chancellor Orvash came through the intercom. Varen, this is madness. Varen's lips curled. No. This is balance. A harsh, ragged breath. You don't have to do this. Varen stepped back, raising his hand. I really do. He gestured to the demolition team. Breach it. A second later, the shaped charge detonated. The reinforced doors buckled inward, metal shrieking as it collapsed. Smoke poured from the entrance. The revenants moved first, rifles sweeping, helmets scanning for movement. Inside, the last of the Concordium's rulers huddled like cornered prey. Orvash knelt among them, his ornate robes torn, his face streaked with ash and terror. Beside him, other counselors clung to each other, too afraid to beg, too broken to speak. Varen entered slowly. His presence filled the room, cold and absolute. He looked down at the Chancellor, the same creature who had laughed at his warning not long ago. Orvash swallowed hard. We were wrong. Varen tilted his head. Say that again. Orvash's voice cracked. We were wrong. Varen crouched, staring directly into his eyes. What were you wrong about, Chancellor? The alien's throat tightened. Everything. Varen nodded, standing. That's right. The Chancellor dared a breath. Then you understand. If you do this, if you wipe us out, you become what you claim to hate. Varen chuckled. That's where you're mistaken. I don't hate you. He gestured around. You think I did all this out of hatred? No. Hatred fades. This? He exhaled slowly. This is justice. One of the counselors sobbed, shaking. Another fell to their knees, hands clasped. Please, they whispered. Let us go. We'll leave the galaxy. We'll never return. Varen's eyes darkened. Like we did? Like the humans who tried to escape before your fleets hunted them down. You gave us no second chances. Orvash trembled. We can coexist. No, Varen said softly. We can't. A counselor lunged, a concealed blade flashing. A final act of defiance. It was over before it began. Varen sidestepped, grabbed the alien's wrist, and drove a combat knife into its throat in a single motion. The counselor collapsed in a gurgling heap. Varen wiped the blade on his sleeve. Anyone else? Silence. He nodded to his soldiers. The gunfire was quick. Precise. Clean. The last remnants of the celestial concordium fell. Their empire, their rule, their legacy, erased. Varen exhaled slowly, turning to his men. It's done. Rourke's voice came through the comms. All objectives complete. The last fleets have surrendered or self-destructed. The Concordium doesn't exist anymore. Varen took a long moment before answering. Then let's make it official. He pressed a command on his gauntlet. A signal pulsed through the fortress, broadcasting across every remaining world. A final message. The war is over. Humanity stands. Let this be remembered, if you strike at us, we will hunt you forever. Across the stars, the message was received. And the galaxy would never forget. The silence in the chamber stretched, thick with the weight of finality. The bodies of the last counselors lay where they had fallen, their power reduced to nothing more than lifeless husks on a cold floor. Elias Varen stood over them, unmoving. The war was over. The hunt was complete. Yet, in the stillness, something lingered, a presence, a truth heavier than the death around him. Rourke's voice broke the quiet. That's it, then? Varen didn't answer immediately. His gaze swept across the ruined chamber, the place where the galaxy's most powerful once dictated the fate of trillions with a wave of their hands. Now, they were gone, and yet the void they left behind did not feel like victory. He turned, his voice even. Status report. Rourke nodded, consulting his data pad. Their entire network is gone. No chain of command left. No fleets in the void. Every planet under their control is either in flames or under occupation. This empire is dust. Varen exhaled, slow and measured. And the remaining species? What's their move? Rourke smirked. They're watching. Waiting. Some are celebrating. Some are afraid. Some are thinking. Varen's jaw tightened. Thinking about what? That maybe they should have let us burn. A pause. Varen knew it was true. The celestial concordium was dead, but power was never truly destroyed, only transferred. Somewhere, in the scattered remains of this broken empire, something new would rise. Another species would grow bold. Another council would form. And another war would come. Rourke continued, tone casual but edged with something sharper. The thing is, boss, we've done what we set out to do. We avenged Earth. We crushed the ones who thought they could wipe us out. But what happens now? He glanced at the bodies. This isn't a war anymore. It's something else. Varen met his gaze, unreadable. It's a warning. A voice crackled over the comms. Commander, incoming transmission. External origin, unknown source. Varen's eyes narrowed. Patch it through. The static cleared. A voice, deep and composed, filled the room. This is Archon Velras of the Drathari Dominion. We have observed your war. We have seen what remains of the Concordium. Varen exchanged a glance with Rourke. A new player. Expected. The voice continued, measured but firm. You have made a statement to the galaxy. You have shown what it means to provoke humanity. But the question remains, what will you do now? Will you lead? Or will you continue to hunt? Varen considered the weight of the words. They carried meaning. They carried challenge. He could hear the unspoken subtext, will you become what you destroyed? He stepped forward, voice steady. The answer depends. A pause. On what? Varen's expression darkened. On whether anyone else thinks they can finish what the Concordium started. Silence stretched for a long moment before Velras responded. Then the galaxy will watch. And wait. The transmission cut. Rourke let out a breath. Well, that's not ominous at all. Varen turned away from the bodies, away from the past. He strode toward the exit, each step echoing through the ruined halls. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We're not done. Rourke followed, a grin playing on his lips. Yeah? And what's the next mission, boss? Varen's voice was quiet, but absolute. Making sure no one ever forgets. The fleet would move. The stars would shift. And the legend of humanity, of the hunters who never stopped, would burn into the fabric of the universe itself. Because war never truly ended. It only waited. And if the galaxy was waiting, then humanity would be watching.